So I've been traveling Southeast Asia for like 2 months now, almost exactly. Um, and I kind of went into this trip not quite knowing what to expect because, I was thinking maybe it'll be kind of like a backpacking trip, maybe like mix in some like fun adventures with a little bit of like, more chill vacation vibe. Um, but then also like just kind of like test out what it's like to actually like live in different places for like at least a few weeks and sort of like see like if the whole like digital nomad lifestyle is like, legit or just kind of a scam. And I think I realized that like depends on who you are because I know that some people do it and they really enjoy it, but like it's really like completely overhyped. Like it's so inconvenient in so many ways, like trying to actually get anything done or be productive unless you're spending like a lot of money per month is what I've realized. Like I'm only taking a couple online classes, so I really don't need like a huge time commitment like people who are trying to work like full-time jobs, right? So I'm only doing maybe um like a few hours of like kind of work per day, like for school. And even then, it's been like really hard to find places that are like, relatively quiet. Like a cafe could be okay if you have headphones on, because it's usually just like, quieter, chatter in the background. But like to find a place that is reasonably quiet, isn't filled with cigarette smoke, and actually has comfortable seating is like damn near impossible in Southeast Asia. And granted, I've only been a few places. I've been to a few places in the Philippines. So I was in Cebu, Bohol, Siquijor, Siargao. I spent the most time in Siargao, like about 6 weeks. And even there, even though it's kind of known as like one of the more like popular islands for like, digital nomads or, travelers, because it has like, the surfing there and like different interesting attractions. Even then, like the amount of options for like decent co-working spaces where you could get like a real desk, like a real chair that you could like sit in for like a full day and like actually get work done was like really surprisingly difficult, like I found that overall I struggled to be very productive. And I was originally going to take 3 classes online, and luckily I didn't actually have to finish any of these classes to graduate. They were just sort of like kind of like recreational or like filler classes. But even then, I had to end up dropping one of them because like trying to manage 3 classes and do like decent enough that I could actually boost my GPA instead of like pull it down. I would have had to dedicate like a lot more time than like I felt like I was able to, because also like the thing with traveling is it's like even I was trying to stay like under 2,000 US dollars a month while traveling. That's including everything basically from like flights to accommodation, food, visas, all of that stuff. And honestly, at that price point, like it's pretty hard to have like actual like nice rooms. Like I was staying in a lot of hostels, and a lot of them are not very nice, but even the nicer hostels, you end up paying like close to like 25 a night for a lot of these places, and they don't even really have like, the best beds. Like maybe they're not that comfortable, or the room smells weird, or there's like nowhere like comfortable to sit really. Like there's no social area with like couches or chairs, or like it seemed like no matter where I stayed, there would always be at least like a few major issues that made me feel like I can't really stay here for more than like maybe a week, 10 days, because some of these issues start to bug you, So like I was originally planning like on staying in like one place for at least like 2 weeks, maybe a month, because that would provide like the structure and stability to actually like get a lot of work done and be productive. But what I realized is that I was gonna have to spend like probably like 100 a night or something, maybe maybe only like 70 a night, but even then like you're only gonna get like a decent play like private room. Like it's not even gonna be like insanely nice. It's gonna be like kind of like mid level, like pretty nice, but definitely not like luxury either. And at least in the Philippines, yeah, rooms are a little bit pricier than people think, because a lot of goods and stuff are imported on islands, so you're paying a bit of a premium and like the carrying over like the cost of the imported construction materials and everything. But even then, I think um, like it's just hard to find places that really have everything you want, because part of the reason I was staying at hostels isn't just to save money, because obviously that's a huge benefit, but it also is kind of an optimal environment to like meet other travelers, to like doing similar things to you, and like people who are like maybe also doing school online or working online, or maybe they're just traveling for fun. And like I did meet some cool people, like, in hostels and stuff, but like what I found is that the people that I actually relate to or like got along with really well were really few and far between. So like I would only meet someone like that once every few weeks, and then often, since they have like different travel plans, they'd be gone in a few days. So hang out for a few days or like do some cool stuff, but then like it's very short. It's not like you're really gonna develop like more serious, long-lasting friendships with other travelers, unless like you schedule to like maybe meet up and travel again in the future, which I know some people do. But I only had 3 months total, or a little under 3 months to travel, so I was like trying to plan things out a little bit. So I left my schedule somewhat open, but it wasn't the most flexible either. So I couldn't necessarily like accommodate my travel plans like a ton, and also like don't necessarily want to go to all the same places as people you meet. So in that way, it's kind of challenging. And um, yeah, I think like if you're living here like in Southeast Asia, more long term, you can definitely save a lot of money versus living in the US, especially if you have like a good remote job. But what I've found is that if you're only staying places like maybe a few weeks to a few months, you can't really get the lower rates on rentals, because you're mostly going to be stuck to hotels and Airbnbs and hostels. So you're going to be paying more of like the tourist premium price. You really have to like get into like the 3 month plus range to get like the longer term rentals or leases. And what I've found too is it's really hard to find good places to stay, because if you book it in advance, your travel plans might change, or you might get there and realize that like either the location or the accommodation itself like isn't very nice. Like that's happened to me like many times. And honestly, I think like I probably should have just like stopped trying to be so budget conscious on this trip. Like I should have just spent the extra 20-30 a night more often and just got like a place that was going to be like a lot nicer. But like I don't know, I kept hoping that like I'd find a place that's like reasonably affordable per night. So like, I was looking at places in like the $30 to $50 a night range, because like I was just sort of like comparing it to rent in California, paying like $1,500 a month in rent, to like break even on rent in California. $50 a night would be like, times 30 days would be about the same as you'd pay for rent there. So I was thinking like, okay, if I stay under $50 a night, then I'm like kind of saving money, at least compared to living in California. But I think the reality is that there's a lot of inconvenience tax you're paying, because you're moving between places. You never really have like everything in the room the way you want it. Like there might be issue with the AC. Like I've had multiple places that just smell super weird, or like have mold, or like, just like dampness. Like even the nicer places I've stayed, it's like, the bathrooms sometimes are just like kind of damp, and it's just like, I'm not necessarily like trying to be super rude, so like I don't really, always want to be like, like pressuring the staff to like, oh, you have to like come clean my bathroom for me, because it just feels kind of like gross, like I don't want to like be that guy who's like all rude, but then it's also like I don't really want to like be in a place that's like not nice, because then I just like feel like shit. And it's like over 2 months of traveling, like I think partially because I wasn't staying in places that are quite as nice as I should have been, and also hostels, like a lot of people in one room, so you're more likely to get sick. But like I've got sick like 2 or 3 times, and like that just kind of ruins like a whole week each time you get sick. And it's like I realize is that if I'm only traveling for like around 3 months, like a good portion of that is like kind of just like ruined or just like shitty, because I'm not feeling the best health wise. And then also like a major thing in Southeast Asia is I was deliberately like looking at air quality maps, and that's part of why I avoided Thailand this time around. Was because the air quality, it tends to be pretty bad like February, March, because of burning season in Thailand. So I stick to like coastal areas and islands, and the Philippines was actually pretty nice depending on where you were. But they also have barely any air quality monitoring stations, so there's almost no data that you can look at to like accurately see if the air quality in an area is going to be good or not. You kind of just have to like guess. And one thing that's really annoying is that like a lot of times people will burn trash, like literal like plastic, not just like wood or like yard debris. Like they will burn plastic, and it's just like it makes like a lot of the like, even though you'd think the cities would be like really polluted, right? And they honestly, they are pretty polluted, because there's a lot of like older engines, and they don't have the best like emission mitigation technologies. But like you'll go to the rural areas expecting it to be like fresh air. It's kind of like more like lower population, kind of like tropical jungle. But then it's like all the neighbors are like burning trash regularly, and then you just feel like you're getting like like horrible like lung issues if you stay outside too long. And then it's like, wait, so I'm paying to be in like this nice tropical destination, and but then it's like, oh, I don't even really feel like I can be outside. Like it's kind of a horrible experience. And luckily that was only for certain portions of my time here. And when I went to like areas that are closer to the beach, or like in like windier areas, it seemed that like the breeze was enough to kind of keep the air pretty fresh, and I didn't have as many issues with that. But then it's like I didn't realize that like in the US a lot of people smoke, but not a lot of people smoke like actual cigarettes. It's a lot of like vapes and like similar products that aren't quite as like strong smelling, and I don't really like the smell of that at all. So like of like cigarettes. And I didn't realize that like almost all European backpackers and travelers smoke cigarettes like probably like a pack a day, it seems. Like every time I went to a hostel, there's multiple people there just smoking. It's like the whole common area just smells like smoke. And it's like I'm getting like fucking secondhand pollution from that. And it's like, I don't know, just kind of, I'm not trying to sound, like I don't appreciate the experience, or like it's not worth trying it if you want to travel. But there's just like a lot of things that like, you have to be like the type of person that's okay with just like pretty like rugged standards as far as like living and like, just general like comfort if you want to do anything like a backpacker lifestyle. And I don't think it's I was honestly going into this trip, I was aiming way more for like kind of like digital nomad lifestyle. I was trying to kind of like do like kind of budget digital nomad like travels. So I was thinking like, okay, I'll stay in some cheaper places and maybe like, a few fun places or like a little more social, but then I'll also stay in like some nicer places. But it's like the brutal reality of it is that like it's very like get what you pay for, and sometimes you're not even going to get what you paid for. So, it's like yeah, it's honestly hard. Like I think I came into this trip thinking like, okay, maybe I'll find a place that I'll like seriously consider for like a longer term stay, like maybe like 6 months or more. And right now I'm in Da Nang, Vietnam, and in a lot of ways I actually like it more because you have all of the amenities of a city, but it's still close to the beach. You have pretty good air quality. It's not as loud as I thought it would be actually, but I probably got fairly lucky as far as not being right near like a busy street. Um, but I think like overall, it's still like a little bit like weird smells on the street, and like the food here is cheaper than the Philippines definitely, and you can get like really good banh mi or like pho on like the street, and especially the local restaurants are affordable. But then what I found is that like when I went to any like Western restaurants, if you want like a burger or like pizza or like, any like international cuisine, like the second you go there, like you're paying like pretty close to like California prices, like US prices for food. And honestly, like it kind of just made me realize like I don't really need to be eating Western food anyways because a lot of it isn't even that healthy. And like Vietnamese food is like honestly like one of the healthiest in Asia, I would say at least. But in the Philippines, a lot of the local food isn't as healthy. It's a lot of fried food. It's just like a lot of just like rice and meat. Like that's kind of like, a little bit of vegetables and fruit too, obviously, but it doesn't feel as like light and refreshing to eat. So I think like overall, it's been, yeah, it's definitely been like a bit of a it's been valuable as far as like knowing that what people tell you on YouTube isn't really the reality. Like I think I had to kind of come here for myself to realize that, even though I'd seen some videos about people who were like, yeah, it's not as amazing, it's not as cheap as it sounds, but like unless you actually like live it, you don't know like if it's worth it for you personally. And that's I think what I've learned is that like there's this there's this kind of like uncanny valley of like traveling, and I think it's kind of this. It's like the first like 1 to 2 weeks, it's like the vacation phase, right? And everything seems new. You're in a new place, like you're meeting new people. You're still like your social battery is still pretty full, so you're like doing a lot, like having fun and stuff. And like that's kind of the sweet spot I think for like traveling in a lot of ways, because you go to a place, you stay there a few weeks, it's really nice. You have a bit higher of a budget because you're only there for a few weeks, so you can justify like nicer hotels, nicer meals and everything. But then like there's this point when you get closer, like 3 weeks to a month in, especially if you're trying to stay a little bit on like a tighter budget, where you start to realize like once the novelty wears off and you start like you get sick, or you're just like get tired of lugging around like all your belongings with you everywhere you go, like there's a backpack or a suitcase or whatever. It's like it's just the point where you just start to realize that it's like really not all it's cracked up to be. And I think that's kind of the point where I'm at, where I'm like 2 months in, and I think it's kind of that like 1 month in to 3 month in range where you're kind of hitting that wall where you're still moving between places every few weeks. You don't have the stability of like a longer term trip, right? But you still have like the expense of kind of like shorter term stays, and but you've still been traveling long enough that like you're maybe not like highest energy levels anymore. So I think it's a bit of like an uncanny valley. It's like you have the initial high when you start a vacation, then it's like, you dip down quite a bit in the like the 1 to 3 month range. But if you were to plan out and stay in one place for like, 3 months and like actually stay in one place, you could actually get like, a lease that's longer term. You can get a way better deal on an apartment or villa, and you're going to end up, saving a lot of money that way. And it's just going to give you the routine where it's like you can actually consistently exercise, go to the gym. You can actually, like, you can actually like find a work routine where you can like get stuff done and like actually be productive, whether that's like school, work, whatever you do, like freelancing, starting a business, whatever it is. So I think if I ever do travel again, I'm gonna try to like hit one of those ends of the spectrum, right? I don't want to do what I did on this trip and hit the uncanny valley again. And I think the best way to do that is I'll maybe go on a few trips that are like a couple weeks and just go to like a really nice place that's maybe a little bit closer to the US, so it justifies, so like you're not paying too much on plane tickets. Like Asia is like, somewhat expensive to get to, although pretty affordable for the distance you're covering. But like, I think realistically, I'll either do that, like a shorter vacation, maybe a few times a year, or I'll try to like actually stay in one place for like, maybe a whole 6 months, right? So like, or maybe split that into like 3 months each. So like maybe I go to Thailand for 3 months, and then maybe I go back to Vietnam for 3 months or something like that, and actually get like a routine going in those places. And I think that could actually be a pretty good strategy. And honestly, in this trip, I was kind of more exploring like, okay, where would I want to stay more long term, like, and I didn't have as much time to actually stay long term this time around. But, now that I'm in Da Nang, I think there's things that I really like about it and things that I, maybe not the most excited about it. But overall, it's a pretty nice city. But like, now that I've actually been here for a few days, I'm thinking like, maybe not really worth it. Maybe it is. I kind of need a few more weeks here to really decide. But I think overall, it's you just kind of have to experience things for yourself to know for sure what you want to do. But yeah, I think that concludes my current thoughts on traveling in Southeast Asia. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'm definitely going to be posting more videos soon about my travel experiences. So, bye.